Daddy, she looks like Mommy.
The blind date was empty until the CEO's daughter invited the poor mom. Amber Wells stepped into the cafe with a careful breath. The place was charming in a softly worn way, wood floorboards that creaked underfoot, pale green walls hung with vintage frames, and a single piano in the corner waiting to be played. The event was a blind date morning, arranged by an app, and Amber's friend had pushed her into it. "Just 1 hour," her friend had said. "You might surprise yourself." So here she was, in a dress chosen 2 nights ago, hair pulled back in a low blonde ponytail, hoping for a chance at something new. She found the table marked reserved and approached. Only 1 chair had been pulled out. She paused, recognizing that the signature of the app's setup meant someone was to join. As she drew closer, she noticed a little girl in a pink dress, legs swinging, back turned to the door, sitting alone. The girl's gaze was pointed outward, beyond the window, as if waiting for something bigger than brunch. "Sweetheart, are you waiting for someone?" Amber asked softly, lowering herself onto the unoccupied chair and placing her purse on the floor beside her. The girl turned slowly. Her dark eyes flickered to Amber's face, lingering. Then she said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "You look like someone from my dreams." Amber blinked. She found the remark strange and kind. In the moment she forgot the routine of being a mother, of being alone, of being invisible. She simply felt seen. The girl's eyes held something ancient, as though she carried memory. Amber closed the small smile on her lips. "Oh, thank you. I didn't expect company quite like this." The girl shifted forward and placed a small hand over Amber's. "You have Mommy's hair," she said. Amber felt her heart catch. She knelt down slightly to meet the child's gaze. The girl looked away, then back. "Will you stay, just for a bit? He's always serious when he's alone." She pointed to the empty seat opposite. Amber felt the world hush for a moment. She looked at the empty seat, then at the child's hopeful face. She nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll stay." Moments later, the cafe door opened again. A tall man entered, his coat hanging from his arm and his shoes clean and muted. Amber recognized the look: tailored suit, sober tie, presence calculated. The man paused briefly as his eyes swept the scene, then he saw the girl and the stranger. His breath steadied. "Daddy, doesn't she look like Mommy?" the girl asked, her voice loud enough that people turned their heads. The man froze mid-step. Amber rose from her seat, purse hanging, cheeks flushed. She said quickly, "I'm so sorry. I thought this table was mine. I didn't mean to." The man raised a hand gently. "You are at the right table." His voice was soft but firm. He pulled out a chair for Amber. Amber sat again, quietly stunned. He looked at his daughter with a mixture of relief and something unspoken. "Emma seems to know more than we do," he said. Amber swallowed, feeling the significance of the moment. The man's eyes flickered back to her hair, the same soft blonde as his late wife's. He realized that what he felt wasn't surprise at the hair or the dress. He felt the presence of memory. A hush settled over the cafe. The morning light filtered through the windows and lit the table in soft circles. The little pink dress, the low ponytail, the quiet ushering of a stranger into what would become something unplanned. Amber looked at Emma, then at the man. She thought of her own child, her own loss, and the hope that maybe for just this morning the empty seat wasn't empty any longer. The morning rush at the cafe had finally eased into a comfortable lull, plates scraped clean, steam curled from freshly poured drinks, and the scent of cinnamon pastry hung lightly in the air. Amber Wells sat between Emma and Logan at the corner booth, the one with the patterned cushion and a small vase of daisies someone had placed that week. Emma, in her pink dress that swirled every time she laughed, stirred her hot cocoa with deliberate care, while Logan, still in his crisp suit, held a coffee untouched as though it were a letter waiting to be opened. Amber watched Emma scoop whipped cream timidly, then bravely take a sip. The child's face lit up with unexpected delight. And Amber quietly smiled, grateful for that moment, but also aware of the silent tension between the father and daughter across from her. Logan gazed at the foam dissolving in Emma's cup, his fingers tracing the cold ceramic ring left behind. Breaking the silence, Emma looked up and asked in her soft voice, "Do you think people in heaven miss us too?" The question arrived like a breeze through a closed window, quiet, unexpected, but carrying meaning. Amber glanced at Logan. His eyes had darkened with memory, lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't respond. Amber turned back to Emma and reached across the table to touch her small hand. "I think they miss us every day," she said gently. "That's why they send reminders. A song on the radio, a scent in the air, a kindness we weren't expecting." Emma's eyes widened. She nodded slowly, as though she understood something for the very first time. Logan inhaled, a sound deeper than regret or relief. Something shifted. Logan's shoulders, which had been stiff since the event started, relaxed. A slight smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. It was subtle, but real. The kind of laugh that slips out when you forget you've closed yourself off. Emma pointed at Logan. "Daddy laughed." Logan's gaze flicked to Amber and then back to Emma, and his lips curved properly for the first time in a long while. Amber felt her chest open slightly. This was more than cocoa and wasted time, it was the start of something. They spoke then slowly at first about trivial things. The new drawing Emma made at school, of a spaceship shaped like a shoe. Ella, the goldfish that Amber's daughter had named last week. And how spring seemed late this year. Emma talked nonstop. Her legs swung, her curls bounced. Stories tumbled out like popcorn. Amber listened, genuinely, asking questions, pausing, laughing. Logan watched and occasionally answered. But mostly, he just let the conversation run around him, like a tide that had been reopened. When Amber noticed the time, she said softly, "I should probably head out soon. My daughter will be home, and I promised pancakes." Emma's face fell. She gathered the cocoa cup and sipped the last drop. Logan stood with her. "Amber, thank you," he said quietly, his voice rough as gravel but sure, "for making Emma smile like that." Amber's fingers touched her ponytail. "She makes it easy," she replied. It was a truth she felt, more than she spoke. Logan's eyes flicked to hers, warm and unfamiliar. Emma jumped up then and ran to Amber. "Will you come back?" she asked. "We'll make space for you." Amber knelt, hugging her. "Only if you promise to keep the whipped cream for me next time." Emma giggled and nodded. Logan watched the exchange. Father, daughter, the woman who had stepped into their quiet space. He realized the seat next to him hadn't just been filled by someone new. It had opened, softly, for something real. Amber left the cafe with a slight blush in her cheeks, not from the warm cocoa, but from something deeper. Behind her, the booth remained, with 2 cups and a coffee untouched, and the afternoon sun turned the daisies golden. Logan reached out and closed the book he'd been reading. He looked toward Amber's departing figure, then at the empty cup. He took a breath. And for the first time in months, his morning didn't taste like regret. Amber stepped out into the cool morning air, her apron slung over her shoulder after a long early shift at the bakery. The street was quiet, save for the soft hum of delivery trucks and the smell of warm pastries lingering behind her. She was halfway through pulling her phone from her bag when something in the corner of her eye stopped her cold. A small figure was curled up beside the cafe's front window. Pink dress, blonde hair tied in a bow. A backpack hugged tightly to her chest like a shield. "Emma." Amber's voice broke, both from surprise and worry. She rushed over and knelt beside the girl. "Emma, sweetheart, what are you doing here? Where's your dad?" Emma lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her cheeks flushed. "I left school," she murmured. I wanted to see you." Amber's heart tightened. "Oh, honey." Emma sniffled and looked down. "They said I don't have a mom because she didn't love me enough to stay." The words hit Amber like a punch. For a second, she couldn't speak. She could only stare at the little girl in front of her, fragile, searching, and far too young to carry that kind of pain. Without a second thought, Amber sat down beside her, wrapping her arms around the girl and pulling her close. "That's not true, sweetheart. That's not true at all," she whispered into Emma's hair. "Sometimes people leave not because they want to, but because life doesn't give them a choice." Emma didn't say anything. She just clung to Amber's sweater, breathing unevenly. Amber gently reached for her phone and dialed Logan's number. He picked up on the first ring. "She's safe," Amber said quickly before he could speak. "But you need to come now." 15 minutes later, Logan's car screeched to a halt in front of the cafe. He jumped out, eyes scanning frantically until he saw them. "Emma," he called, rushing toward them. When he reached them, his relief quickly turned into frustration. "Emma, you cannot just disappear like that. Do you know how scared I was?" Emma looked down, tears forming again. Amber rose slowly and stepped between them. "She didn't run to escape, Logan," she said softly but firmly. "She ran to be understood." Logan blinked, his mouth slightly open. He looked at his daughter, really looked, and saw the weight she carried in her tiny shoulders, the sadness she never put into words. He knelt down and pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't hear how lonely you've been." Emma clutched him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his neck. Then she turned her head slightly and looked at Amber. "She listens," she said, voice soft, "like Mommy used to." Amber's eyes filled, but she managed to smile and brushed a hand gently through Emma's hair. Logan stood slowly, still holding his daughter, and turned to Amber. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. "Really, for being there when she needed someone." Amber gave a small nod. "I know it's a lot to ask," Logan continued, "but would you let me buy you dinner, just to say thank you? For today." Amber hesitated, glancing between him and Emma. Her lips curved into a warm, understanding smile, but she shook her head gently. "Not today," she said softly, "but thank you for asking." Logan didn't press. He just nodded, quietly watching her walk away. Emma peeked over his shoulder, watching too. "Will we see her again, Daddy?" Logan looked toward the woman disappearing down the street. He didn't answer immediately. Then, after a long moment, he murmured, "I hope so." The park was lively that afternoon, filled with families gathered for Family Day, a school-organized event celebrating connection and play. Balloons floated in clusters, children ran across the grass, and picnic blankets dotted the open spaces. Amber, unaware of the school event, had simply come to unwind with her daughter Ella after a long shift. Ella, 4 years old, wore a pale yellow dress and her signature bouncy curls. Her brown eyes lit up the moment she spotted the sandbox. "Mommy, can I play?" she asked, already halfway there. Amber chuckled. "Of course. Just don't throw sand this time." As Ella stepped into the sandbox, she wasn't alone. A little girl in a pink dress was already there, scooping sand with a tiny shovel. It was Emma. The two girls eyed each other for a moment. Then Emma tilted her head and stared at Ella's curls. "Your hair looks like hers," she said curiously. "Are you her daughter?" Ella nodded, still holding her bucket. Emma smiled. "Then we're kind of sisters." Without hesitation, they began building a castle together. Buckets passed back and forth. Laughter followed. They giggled over crumbling towers and made up silly names for their kingdom. Amber, watching from a bench nearby, smiled at the sight. She didn't notice the murmurs until they grew louder. "Isn't that the single mom from the diner?" "I think so. She's with the CEO's daughter. Strange, right? She sure knows where to be seen." Amber stiffened. The warmth of the moment melted into discomfort. Then came a voice, cool and condescending, from behind her. "So, this how you find a better future? Through your daughter's playground?" Amber turned slowly. A woman in designer sunglasses stood there, arms crossed. She clearly knew Logan. Amber's mouth opened, but no words came. She reached for Ella, gently calling her over. "Come on, sweetheart, it's time to go." Ella pouted. "But we're not done with the towers." Amber didn't respond. She picked her up and turned to leave, but before she could take a step, Logan's voice cut through the air. "I heard everything." He stood a few feet away, hands clenched at his sides. His eyes, usually guarded, were blazing with restrained anger. He looked at the woman coldly. "If your child had half the kindness of hers," he said, nodding toward Amber, "I might actually respect you." The woman blinked, stunned. Logan didn't wait for a reply. He turned and caught up with Amber. She had stopped, but didn't look at him. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "No one should talk to you like that." Amber still didn't turn. "People like me don't usually belong in parks like that," she murmured. "Or tables like yours." Logan stepped closer. "Then maybe it's time I stop sitting at tables where kindness isn't served." Finally, Amber looked at him. Their eyes met his, filled with apology, hers with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "Emma and Ella," she said, trying to smile. "They're natural with each other. It's the adults who ruin things." Logan nodded. "Maybe it's time we learn from them." Ella squirmed in Amber's arms. "Can we come back and play again?" Amber looked at Logan. He offered a slight smile. "Anytime." Amber hesitated, then let Ella down. The little girl ran back to Emma, and soon they were laughing again, oblivious to the tensions of the world around them. And for the first time in a long while, Amber stayed. She didn't run, and neither did Logan. After that day in the park, Emma talked about Ella constantly. At breakfast, during bath time, even as Logan tucked her into bed, the same question would return with hopeful eyes. "Can we see Ella again? And her mommy too?" Logan hesitated each time. He wasn't sure what this was, what it could become. But then, one night, after Emma had fallen asleep with a drawing of her new sister, Logan stared at the crayon, smiles, and thought, maybe this matters more than what makes sense. "So," he called Amber. "I was thinking, maybe dinner? Somewhere simple. Just the four of us." There was a pause on the other end. "Simple?" Amber asked, cautiously. "Nothing fancy, just dinner," Logan said. "A small place on Maple Street. My assistant says the food is decent." Amber was quiet again. Then came Ella's excited voice in the background. "Mommy, is it Emma? Are we going?" Amber sighed, but her voice softened. "All right, just dinner." The restaurant was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist, its sign flickering gently above the door. Inside, the lights were dim and golden, casting a cozy glow on wood-paneled walls. Emma spotted Ella first and dashed forward, taking her hand like they had never been apart. "I saved you a seat," she chirped, pulling her to the booth. Amber smiled, sitting across from Logan. She wore a simple navy dress, her blonde hair tied back as always, no makeup beyond a hint of color on her lips. Logan studied her for a moment. She looked tired, but there was something steady in her presence, something real. Emma and Ella talked non-stop about school, playground rules, and how Ella once named a goldfish Banana. Logan chuckled quietly. Amber listened patiently, nodding, encouraging. He realized suddenly, Amber was like a grown-up version of Emma. Her empathy, her calm, her way of hearing more than just words. It startled him, in a good way. When the girls got up to explore the gumball machine near the door, Amber leaned back and sighed. "I didn't plan for this," she said, watching them. "My life, it's messy." Logan stirred his coffee. "Maybe messy is just another word for real. I've had enough of perfect." Amber looked at him. "Ella asked me once why she didn't have a dad like other kids." "What did you say?" "I told her." She paused. "Some stories begin with just one hero, but that doesn't mean they end that way." Logan didn't reply, but his gaze dropped to the empty sugar packet he twisted in his hands. Outside, rain had started to fall. soft and steady. By the time they stepped out, the sidewalk glistened, and puddles formed under the streetlight. Emma squealed as the rain touched her cheeks. "We're gonna get wet." Logan smiled, pulled off his coat, and wrapped it around both girls. Then, with a quiet grunt, he picked up Emma and took Ella's hand. Amber blinked, surprised by how naturally it happened. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just instinct. She walked beside them, the four of them under one umbrella of shared laughter. They reached Logan's car soaked, but no one complained. The girls giggled in the back seat, wrapped in the oversized coat, faces glowing. Amber looked at Logan as he helped buckle Ella in. "You didn't have to carry her," she said softly. He met her eyes, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I wanted to." Amber didn't respond. But something inside her, something long guarded, shifted slightly. A warmth, a strange, unfamiliar ease. And for the first time in a long while, she wondered if maybe not all beautiful things were meant to fade. The photos hit the internet less than 24 hours after their quiet dinner. Candid shot, Logan, Amber, Emma, and Ella seated at a small table, the girls mid-laughter, Amber leaning in to wipe Ella's cheek, Logan looking on with a rare softness. The headline blared, "Widowed CEO caught dining with single mom and 2 kids, a new family?" By morning, it was everywhere. Within hours, the past Amber had buried was resurrected. Forums questioned her intentions. Blogs unearthed her incomplete nursing degree, a years-old eviction record, jobs at diners, gas stations. The words unqualified and opportunist floated beside her name. At Logan's company, the boardroom felt colder than usual. The board chair tapped her pen sharply. "Mr. Cole, your personal associations are creating unnecessary media turbulence. Investors are watching." Logan folded his hands, jaw clenched. "Are you saying dinner is a liability?" "We're saying optics matter. You are the face of this company. Your late wife came from legacy. This woman..." The chair paused. "Careful. Does not." The room waited. Logan said nothing. When the meeting ended, he stood, unknotted his tie in one slow pull, and walked out without a word. That night, Amber stared at the news broadcast on her tiny TV. A reporter smiled too brightly. "Who is Amber Wells? A small-town waitress with a complicated past. Is she the right match for the man behind a billion-dollar firm?" Ella played with her stuffed giraffe on the floor, unaware. Amber turned off the TV. Her fingers trembled as she folded Ella's clothes into a small bag. She'd been here before, leaving before things could break her worse. She was halfway through zipping the duffel when a knock came. Logan stood at the door, drenched from the rain. He didn't wait to be invited in. His eyes swept the room, landing on the packed bag. Amber stood, arms folded across her chest. "You should not be here." "I saw the news," he said quietly. "I'm leaving before it gets worse." Logan took a step closer. "Worse? For who?" Amber's voice cracked. "For you. You have a reputation to protect. I only have Ella." He looked at her for a long moment. Then his voice rose, not in anger, but urgency. "And you think my daughter needs stockholders more than someone like you?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Logan stepped closer. Rain still clung to his coat. "They said you don't belong in my world," he whispered. "But the truth is, I stopped belonging in that world long ago." Amber's defenses cracked. The storm outside raged, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside her, grief, fear, hope, crashing all at once. "She listens to me," Amber finally said, her voice soft. "Emma listens. That's all I've ever really wanted, for someone to feel heard." Logan nodded, the weight in his eyes too heavy to hold back. "She told me you listen like her mother used to." Amber bit her lip, eyes welling. "I don't want to be anyone's replacement," she said. "You aren't," Logan said simply. "You're the first person who ever showed up without asking for anything." A moment passed. Then, from the back of the apartment, Ella's voice called sleepily, "Mommy? Is the rain talking to someone?" Amber laughed through her tears. Logan smiled. "Tell her it's just someone who's done running." The backyard wasn't much, just a small patch of grass bordered by a weathered wooden fence, a folding table dressed with a floral cloth, and a dozen balloons swaying gently in the spring breeze. But to Emma and Ella, it was a kingdom of color, laughter, and something that felt suspiciously like home. Their birthdays were only 10 days apart, and after weeks of relentless pleading and secret plans whispered under blankets and between classroom breaks, the two girls had convinced their parents to throw a joint celebration. "Like real sisters do," Emma had declared, her eyes shining with certainty, as if the universe had already agreed. Amber had hesitated. It felt too soon, too intimate, too exposed. Every part of this, sharing space, memories, even a cake, meant inviting vulnerability. But Logan had looked at her and simply said, it would mean the world to them, and in his voice, she heard not pressure, but quiet truth. So here they were. The party was small, intentionally so. Just a handful of close neighbors, a few of Emma's classmates, and one old golden retriever from next door who refused to leave the festivities. No caterers. No photographers. Just homemade cupcakes on mismatched paper plates, streamers that fluttered under the breeze, and the kind of joy that couldn't be bought or staged. Amber set out the juice boxes on a tray, watching the girls dash through the grass. Their matching dresses, pink for Emma, yellow for Ella, twirled with every spin. Their laughter echoed against the fence, bouncing back like applause. Logan arrived carrying 2 wrapped gifts tucked carefully under his arm. He handed the first to Emma, a sketchbook with thick, textured pages and a tin of colored pencils. Her face lit up as she hugged it to her chest like it was treasure. "For all the dreams you haven't drawn yet," he said softly, and Emma beamed. Then he handed the second to Ella, a bright red toy medical kit, complete with a stethoscope, bandages, and a name badge that read, Dr. Ella. "Because your mom once dreamed of helping people too," he explained, glancing at Amber with something unspoken in his eyes. Ella's eyes widened. "Really?" Amber smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her voice caught slightly. "Really?" The two girls immediately began playing doctor and patient under the soft garden lights, giggling over invisible fevers and very dramatic recoveries. Then, just as the cake was being carried out, Amber reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "Before we cut the cake," she said, standing near the table, "I have something for both of you." Emma and Ella hurried over, hands sticky from frosting. Amber opened the box to reveal 2 tiny heart-shaped pendants, each engraved with the same delicate script. "You were never missing. You were always meant to find each other." The yard fell still. Emma blinked rapidly. Ella clutched the pendant like it was made of stardust. Then, without a word, the two girls wrapped their arms around each other, faces buried in each other's shoulders. Their small bodies shook with tears that only children cry, pure, honest, and healing in a way adults often forget. Amber knelt beside them, pulling both close, resting her forehead gently against theirs. Logan stepped forward, kneeling too. Emma looked up through teary lashes. "Now we both have a mommy and a daddy," she whispered. Amber's breath hitched. Logan's lips parted, then pressed closed as he reached forward, one arm around Emma, the other around Amber. He looked at her, not like a man overwhelmed, but like someone finally found. "You've given us," his voice broke, then steadied with care. "More than family. You gave us back our hearts." Amber didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, surrounded by tangled balloons, soft music, and a cake waiting to be cut, they all knew. Love didn't always need declarations. Sometimes it just needed a seat at the table and a second candle to share. The cafe looked different now. The once faded awnings had been replaced with soft cream-colored ones that fluttered gently in the morning breeze. Fresh flowers, lavender, marigolds, and a few wild daisies lined the windowsills in chipped ceramic pots that Amber had painted with Emma and Ella on a lazy Sunday. Inside, the light streamed through clean panes, casting a warm glow across wooden tables that had been sanded, restained, and polished with care. At one of those tables, Amber stood with her sleeves rolled to her elbows, her blonde hair tied loosely at the nape of her neck. She moved with the quiet rhythm of someone who had grown into the space, pouring warm milk into two small mugs, steam curling like soft questions between them. Ella, dressed in her favorite yellow dress, reached eagerly for her cup, the warmth of it almost as comforting as the woman handing it to her. Beside her, Emma sat cross-legged on the bench, gently tapping out a song on a miniature toy piano set up by the window. Her pink dress caught the morning light, glowing like the inside of a seashell. The space was no longer just a cafe. It was a ritual, a rhythm, a safe place where hearts settled and laughter lingered longer than coffee foam. After the old cafe owner had retired, the community organization that supported single mothers had stepped in. They saw something in Amber, her steady hands, her quiet warmth, the way she made even silence feel safe. With their support, she took over the lease. But she hadn't just run a business. She had built a haven, the kind where neighbors left books for each other in a free library shelf near the door, where toddlers sat on mismatched cushions with picture books, and teenagers came in after school just to do homework at the big back table, where birthday candles were lit over muffins and love letters were scribbled onto napkins. Just after the morning rush, Logan stepped in. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly tousled by the wind. He paused at the door, not to catch his breath, but to take it away. The scene before him looked like a moment he never thought he'd live. Amber looked up and met his gaze. Her lips lifted, soft and knowing. "Running late?" she asked, nodding toward the empty cup beside the coffee machine. He stepped forward, his smirk crooked and familiar. "Your coffee's worth the wait." Then Emma spotted him and squealed, "Daddy, our table's still here." She leapt from her bench and sprinted toward him. Logan scooped her up, kissed the top of her head, then walked her back to the table, where Ella grinned up at him, her hands still curled around her mug. He pulled out a chair and sat, looking at them, Amber reaching to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, Ella giggling at something. Emma whispered, "The sunlight spilling like honey across the table," he said, quietly. "It always will be." Amber didn't answer with words. She didn't need to. Because, in this place, built from broken pieces and warm mornings, from tiny hands and steady hearts, there was nothing left to prove. No contracts, no ceremonies, just love. Real, daily, whole. The camera pulls back, wide and slow. Outside, the world hurried on. Inside, time exhaled. At a table meant for four, a family sipped cocoa, shared stories, and held on to something that had once seemed impossible. Forever, one morning at a time. Fade out. If this story touched your heart the way a child's words can melt even the coldest silence, and how love can grow in the most unexpected places, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances. And for more heartfelt stories of kindness, healing, and love that stays long after the credits roll, subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales. Every story is a reminder that hope is never too far, and sometimes all it takes is one table, one smile, and someone willing to stay. Thank you for watching.